Good morning! This is a special day. Woo! I just finished the 7.42.0 release. I have this morning that I had most of the commits prepared. I have separate branches, so this morning I basically merged everything into the main branch and I pushed it all. I tagged them, both the website Git repo and the normal code repo, and I emailed out the release announcement, and I did 4 security announcements. You know, I mentioned last week that I had 2 security problems in for this release. Turned out to be 4. Yeah, actually I have one more too that I'm going to save for the next release, unfortunately. Anyway, so we did 4 security problems, and well, let me just say this. We did a couple of things in 7.42.0. Primarily, we did 118 bug fixes, so I think that's pretty good for a single release in 56 days. And we did 7 changes that aren't bug fixes, that are kind of changes to features. So all in all, very good. 47 individual contributors, so excellent. The changes for this release, very minor, so most people won't care or notice, but we did now implement TLS false start for 2 TLS backends. And we did this path assist that I mentioned before, so that you can tell curl to not merge ... sequences in the path. And oh right, what might be notable to some, those of you who actually use curl in scripts like the curl tool, now when you do curl-o to save a file, and that file happens to be empty, but I mean successfully empty, just a website with 0 byte contents, it will actually create that file as 0 bytes. Previously it never created files when there were no contents that ever arrived, so a 0 byte file would never actually create a 0 byte file because there were never any bytes that arrived, so it would never create anything, which was a bug. It was intentionally made so years ago, but when you do, it turns out to be really awkward and weird, because 0 byte files are actually a thing. So yeah, now it's supposed to work. This may then actually kind of alter how scripts and some of your stuff works, but anyway, I think this is the right way to do it. So back to the security fixes, 4 of them. The first 2 ones are kind of in the regular track record of our security problems. We've had, I think, 2 or 3 before regarding connection reuse. And connection reuse is a tricky beast, in particular when using authentication methods with HTTP that are connection based instead of request based. Since normally everything HTTP is request based. Every request is standalone, so every request has its own authentication, so you can basically speak with the same connection and have different authentications for different requests. But there are some notable exceptions to that, and one is the good old NTLM authentication, which is a Microsoft authentication method created years ago. It's a bloody mess. It's awful, but one of our problems were involving that. So when you did an NTLM request first, and then you would do to the same host another request, but with another set of authentication without the same credentials even, curl could actually reuse the existing NTLM connection and ask for the next result on that, even though that the next request was not using the same credentials at all. So yeah, that could really mess up server side. And a very similar one, there is another HTTP authentication called negotiate. And negotiate is slightly more modern, but possibly even worse than NTLM, because negotiate is kind of a umbrella method, so it can use different methods underneath, kind of hidden, and one of them is NTLM. So negotiate has to be considered and treated as connection oriented. Well, maybe not always, but at least in this case it should be. And we don't treat it as connection oriented, so we would treat it as request oriented, and then it could lead to basically the same thing. If you authenticate a connection with negotiate, and then we would think that you could change the authentication and just ask for something else with different credentials, we would reuse the same connection even though it would be authenticated as another user. Blah blah blah. Of course you can read up on these details. They're rather confusing and subtle, and you have to be aware of this if you use these methods in your applications, and especially if you change user or change credentials to the same host. Both of these problems require that. And then we got two other different kinds of security problems, and they are more in the good old style, buffer and memory related, out of memory region accesses. It turned out that we had this great guy, his name is Hanno Böck. He ran this American Fuzzy something, AFL, is a fuzzier that just throws random garbage on various files and config files and arguments that curl can use and try and sees what it sees what happens. So Hanno then found out, he actually found at least 3 problems, but one of them weren't really security related, so that is already fixed in this release. And then he found one problem in the cookie parser, which what was it? Yeah, right. It was when you send in a path that was only a double quote and nothing else. As a single double quote, so that would be a really broken path then, since a cookie header is not supposed to use that, and a cookie file should never have that. But of course you can craft your own headers and files, and you could feed that to curl, and it would read actually it would read from a pointer -1, so it would access the memory, the wrong memory, and it would actually write a 0 to that memory, so it would most often just crash, but it could potentially be malicious. And then we had almost the same problem, also found by the same guy, Hanno, with the host name parser actually passing in a 0-length host name, as in http:// no host name at all, :80. Then we would get a 0-length host name, and we would pass that into another function that I actually added rather recently in 7.37, that would also then assume that there was a length in the host name, and it would use length -1 and access that to try to check the last digit in the host name. But if there was no length, as it would be after the right. So anyway, that would also then lead to accessing and assigning a 0 outside of the memory region for the host name, and it would crash. Bleh. So 4 of them, I have them detailed on the website. You should read up on them if anything of this sounds like you might be affected, and chances are you will be if you're using curl or libcurl in your stuff. Anyway, we have patches and we have all details, and I did also update the security page on curl now, on the curl site, to list all the vulnerabilities in a fairly condensed and just here are all the problems, and of course click on them to find all the details. And I actually wrote up separate pages for all the oldest problems too, so that we have a single page for every single individual problem. Turned out to be fairly nicely kind of overview. Looks like many of them, 34 by now. But well, we're over 17 years, so that's like 2 per year on average. of course, then, as I mentioned before, we're kind of ramping that up. We have many more per year recently than we did in the beginning. Anyway, it is good that we're finding and addressing the problems. So keep on reporting security problems if you find them and if you see them. I did post the, as I mentioned last week, I want to do a survey this year too. I want to make it as an annual libcurl user survey. So I posted to the mailing list and I made a wiki page. See the link up here somewhere about the questions I want to ask. I got a complete silence as a response to that. So I'm just thinking that I thought of everything myself. So the questions are perfect and there's nothing else to ask for. And no questions to remove either. Perfect. I've also submitted my kind of application to the HTTP workshop this summer in Münster with the HTTP community. So I'm hoping to attend that. We'll see about that. I don't really have any particular talks or grand visions for HTTP after HTTP 2, but I want to participate in the discussions, and I have some more just of a laundry list about things we should perhaps consider or discuss to do in the next HTTP. Then I wanted to say that in Firefox Nightly, I've just submitted my patch to fix the Lancet and a couple of other sites that I've mentioned last week too that I broke because of this endless fight against trying to find the end of a HTTP 1.1 response. Finding the end by checking the gzip trailer wasn't a very good idea either, so I'm not doing that either. So I'm back to also fixing the unavailable proxy problem. So if you set up a proxy at work and you bring your laptop home and you can't access the proxy anymore, where I want to make Firefox ignore that proxy then if you can't access it. And it seems that the other browsers do it that way, so I'm gonna make Firefox do it too. Not there yet. I'm also working on some interesting other side projects or projects to work more on curl actually, and hope to be able to tell you more details about that soon. Last week I mentioned that I was going to show you something interesting this week, and I'm not, because I haven't really been able to complete that. But I could tell you that I wanted to make, you know, I like silly graphs and stats and everything, especially on the curl project, since, yeah, that's what I do. So I wanted to make, I wanted to show you a graph about how we fix bugs, or bug fixing rate, and how it has changed over time in the curl project, kind of the last 5 years or so, and especially in kind of relation to me joining Mozilla, and if it has changed the rate, or if it has in any way affected the project in ways that we can measure or see in commit count or bug fix count or release frequency or whatever. And I wanted to show you that, and I'm going to. I've just not completed it. I'm not sure I will complete it this week either, but I have the data and I'm collecting even more data, and then I get the problem, how am I gonna present this in a way that looks nice and can be understandable. So I'm kind of I'm gonna try to do that. I'm gonna write some blog post about it and probably cram out a whole lot of different weirdo graphs that probably just me and 2 other persons in the world will care about. But it's gonna be fun, and of course you care a lot. That is that for this week. So this is episode 29. Next week there's going to be the big grand 30 episode anniversary, and it's going to be great, I'm sure. And that's kind of the signal from my screensaver turned all blue. And I just wanted to show you this sticker again because it's fun. I brought it out just to show you. Ooh, girl. That's it for this week. See you again in a week then. Enjoy. And do submit your bugs, and a lot of features now. We're opening the feature window again in curl so we can just merge everything. And yeah, we have a bunch of things coming in, so it's going to be new features and new changes in this version too. Bring them on. Bye.